My parents kicked me out to make room for my sister's baby, so I bought my own home and left them begging for forgiveness. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived in my parents' house under one unspoken title, the responsible one. It wasn't something they ever said out loud, but it was the role they handed me the moment I was old enough to hold it. I grew up believing responsibility was the same thing as love, and because of that, I spent most of my life trying to make myself useful. Even now, when I think about it, I can still smell the early morning kitchen, cold tiles, burnt toast, and the quiet hum of a house waking up as I packed lunches before heading to my part-time job and college classes. I handled bills without being asked. I cooked dinner most nights. I cleaned the bathrooms, mowed the lawn, took out the trash. And every time I did something, my parents barely looked up. My mom would just say, "You're good at keeping things together," like it was a compliment. My dad would nod and move on. Meanwhile, my younger sister floated through life like a feather in the wind, landing wherever she wanted without consequence. She'd forget chores, skip responsibilities, change plans last minute, fail classes, and somehow, every time, my parents found a way to smile and say, "She's just figuring things out." I used to sit quietly at the dinner table, listening to them praise her for turning in assignments on time, while I worked double shifts and came home to wash the dishes she left in the sink. The resentment grew slowly, quietly, like moss on the side of a house. You don't notice it until one day, everything looks green and rotted. Then my sister announced she was pregnant. And suddenly, the atmosphere in the house shifted. My parents whispered behind closed doors. They paused conversations when I walked in. They acted like something heavy was hanging above all of us, waiting to drop. And the worst part? I could feel it too, this uneasy, tightening feeling in my gut. Like something big was coming, and whatever it wasn't going to be good for me. I knew something was off the moment my mom called me into the living room with that strained, too bright smile she only used when she was rehearsing something in her head. The lights were dim, the curtains half closed, and the television was muted even though Dad never muted anything. I sat down slowly, my palms feeling sweaty against the fabric of the couch. There was this strange heaviness in the air, like the room itself was holding its breath. My mom started with, "We have exciting news," in this tone people use right before giving you bad news wrapped in cheap glitter. Dad cleared his throat and added, "We're all going to need to make some adjustments now that your sister is expecting." I remember blinking at them, confused, because I didn't understand why their adjustments involved me. Before I could ask, my mom's voice dipped into the soft, patronizing register as she said, "We were thinking it might be time for you to give up your room." At first, I thought I misheard my room. I repeated, Dad didn't even look apologetic. "Well, the baby will need a nursery. And you're an adult now. Independence is important." I felt something in my chest twist, embarrassment, disbelief, maybe even a little humiliation. "I contribute here," I reminded them quietly. "I handle bills, I cook, My mom cut me off with a sigh. "This is just temporary. Don't be dramatic." Temporary, right, just like every temporary responsibility that somehow became permanent the moment I agreed to it. Their minds were already made up, I could see it in the way they exchanged relieved glances, like they had finally unloaded something heavy. I sat there, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My sister wasn't even in the room, this was all happening without her having to say a word. And as I listened to them outline a plan that didn't include my input, a cold realization formed in my chest, whatever was coming next. I wasn't going to have a say in it. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but the very next morning proved I wasn't. My mom knocked on my door, 2 quick taps, the kind she used when she'd already decided something, and poked her head in with a cheerful tone that didn't match the tension in my chest. "Sweetie, don't forget to start going through your things today," she said, as if she were reminding me to pick up milk from the store. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face, the morning sunlight slicing across the room I had lived in my entire life. It suddenly felt smaller, like it was already being taken away. When I walked into the garage later, I froze. Stacked neatly against the wall was a collection of baby furniture, crib pieces, boxes of decorations, unopened containers of pastel paint. My room hadn't even been cleared yet, but the nursery supplies were already waiting. My stomach sank. I hadn't even begun packing, and they were behaving like I was already gone. My sister strolled in a few minutes later, sipping a smoothie, her voice dripping with excitement. "I can't wait to redo your room," she said, not even bothering to hide her grin. "It's going to be so much cuter than this boring house vibe Mom likes." I stared at her. "My room," I repeated quietly. She shrugged. "Well, soon to be the baby's room." The way she said it, light, dismissive, made something sharp twist in my chest. That night, I confronted my parents in the kitchen. "You've already bought everything for the nursery," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't even wait to see what I wanted." My dad didn't look up from his tea. "We're doing what's best for the family." Mom added, "You're making this more complicated than it needs to be." The message couldn't have been clearer. I wasn't part of the decision, I wasn't even part of the equation. As I walked back to my room, the hallway lights buzzed faintly, and the house felt colder than it ever had. And for the first time, I realized I needed to start planning, because something worse was coming. A few days later, my parents called me into the dining room like they were hosting some kind of formal meeting. The table was set with nothing but a folder, a notepad, and my dad's reading glasses, details that made my stomach twist before anyone even spoke. My mom folded her hands and said, "We've decided it's best to set a gentle deadline so everything stays organized." The words "gentle deadline" echoed in my head like a sick joke. Dad cleared his throat and added, "We think 30 days is reasonable for you to move out." I felt the air leave my lungs. 30 days? I repeated. "I don't have a place lined up. I don't even know where I'm supposed to go." Mom gave a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're responsible. You'll figure it out. You always do." That line, "you always do," burned more than anything else. My responsibility was the very reason they felt comfortable throwing me out. I spent the next week buried in online listings, scrolling through cramped apartments with peeling paint and rents that made my chest tighten. Every time I opened a new tab, I could hear my sister laughing in the living room or my mom humming as she sorted baby clothes. It was like the house was already forgetting I existed. At work, my exhaustion showed. A coworker tapped my shoulder during lunch and said, "You okay, man? You look drained." I wanted to say everything, how my family was replacing me, how I was being pushed out, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just muttered, "Rough week." He nodded, offering me half his sandwich with a kindness that felt foreign after the coldness at home. When I returned that evening, I found my sister in my doorway, measuring the walls with a tape measure. "Getting ready," she said casually. "This is still my room," I managed. She didn't even pause. "Not for long." Her words landed like a final blow. I stood there silently, feeling the walls closing in. And in that moment, 30 days suddenly felt like a countdown to something I wasn't ready to face. The day I finally moved into the cramped studio apartment felt like stepping into someone else's life, someone smaller, someone displaced. The room smelled faintly of old paint and dust, the kind that clings to your clothes the moment you put your bags down. I dropped my backpack on the floor and just stood there, staring at the single window facing an alleyway filled with humming AC units. This wasn't a fresh start, it was exile. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel peaceful, it felt like abandonment. That night, I sat on the thin mattress I had bought secondhand and whispered to myself, "How did it come to this?" Hearing my own voice break felt pathetic, but the tears came anyway, hot, embarrassing, unstoppable. I pressed my palms against my eyes, replaying every moment of the past few weeks. The gentle deadline. The smug tape measurer in my doorway. The way my parents didn't even check if I had somewhere safe to land. It all added up to one truth I didn't want to face: I wasn't needed. I wasn't valued. I was just convenient. My phone buzzed. A notification from my sister's social media. Against my better judgment, I opened it. A photo of my parents standing in my old room, freshly painted, decorated, glowing with pastel colors. The caption read, "New beginnings. So excited for our baby's space." Not a single mention of me. Not even a thanks to my brother for making room. I stared at the screen until the colors blurred. The pain wasn't just emotional, it felt physical, a tight pressure spreading through my chest and into my throat. I curled onto the mattress, listening to the distant hum of traffic, the walls closing in like the world was shrinking. In that dark, suffocating moment, I realized something brutal. I used to think I had no choice but to stay in that house, but now I had no home at all. And lying there in that cold, unfamiliar room, I felt a shift, something heavy, something final. Because if I was going to survive this, I'd have to change everything. The morning after that breakdown, I dragged myself into work with the kind of numbness that makes everything feel like it's happening underwater. The office lights were too bright, the air conditioning too cold, and every sound, the clicking keyboards, the distant phone rings, felt sharper than usual. I kept my head down, trying to hide how hollowed out I felt, but apparently I wasn't doing a great job of it. During a slow afternoon, my senior coworker, Mark, approached my desk and leaned against the partition with a gentle frown. "You look like you got hit by life," he said, not joking, not prying, just stating what he saw outside. "Rough few weeks." He tilted his head. "You find a place?" "Barely," I muttered. "And I'm paying way more than I can afford." Mark nodded slowly, then said something that stopped me cold. "Why don't you look into buying?" I actually laughed. "Buying? I can't even afford a decent apartment." But instead of brushing it off, he pulled up a chair. "You'd be surprised. First-time homebuyer programs, low-down payments, grants, people don't realize how many options there are. You've been working steady for years, right? Good credit?" I nodded quietly, "Then look into it. You might qualify." His tone wasn't pushy. It was hopeful. It felt strange having someone believe in a future for me when my own family didn't. His words lodged themselves in my mind like a spark in a dark room. That night, back in my tiny studio, I sat on the floor with my laptop and started researching. The glow of the screen lit the room, making it feel bigger than it was. As I scrolled through programs, calculators, loan estimates, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a flicker of possibility, small but real. Could I actually build something of my own? Could I choose myself for once? By the time I shut the laptop, my heart was beating faster, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar feeling of hope. And I knew this was only the beginning. 2 weeks into researching loans, meetings with mortgage advisors, and scrolling through homes I never imagined I could afford, I finally felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet. The studio still felt cramped, but it didn't feel like punishment anymore, it felt like transition. Every night, the glow of my laptop lit up the peeling walls as I compared down payments and interest rates with a kind of determination I didn't know I had. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. Building. Moving forward. And then, they called. It started with a text from my mom, "We miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Before I could respond, my phone rang. "Hey, honey," my mom said sweetly, the same sugary tone she used when she wanted something. "What's going on?" I asked flatly. "Well, your sister's really overwhelmed. The nursery still needs organizing, and she's exhausted. We thought maybe you could come help out for a bit." There it was. Not "we miss you." Not "are you okay," just "we need you to work again." "I'm busy," I said quietly. "With what?" My dad's voice chimed in from the background, irritated. "You can spare a few hours." "I really can't," I insisted. "I have my own things to take care of now." A stunned silence followed. My mom's voice shifted instantly. "Are you being serious? Your family needs you." Family, of the word stung more than it should have. "That weekend, my sister called too. Can you come help move the dresser?" "It's heavy," she said with zero shame. "No, seriously," she snapped. "You're really going to abandon us?" I almost laughed at the irony. They didn't want me back, they wanted my labor. My compliance. My silence. I hung up, my heart pounding, not from guilt, but from the sudden, electrifying realization that they didn't know. They didn't know I was inches away from buying my own home. And for the first time in my life, the power was shifting. 3 days after that string of guilt-laced phone calls, I woke up to an email notification on my phone. I rubbed my eyes, expecting another bill or spam message, but then I saw the subject line, your mortgage pre-approval letter. For a moment, I just stared at it, my heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My tiny studio apartment was still half dark, sunlight barely slipping through the cheap blinds, but the second I opened that email, the whole room felt brighter, like the air itself shifted. I sat up slowly, letting the words sink in. Pre-approved. Me. The kid who had always been treated like temporary furniture in his own home. I whispered, "Oh my God." I did it, and hearing those words out loud made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with something warm, something like pride. Later that afternoon, I met my realtor, Jenna, in front of a small single-story home on a quiet street. The weather was warm, the air smelled like cut grass, and for once I didn't feel like an outsider. "This one fits your budget perfectly," she said, unlocking the door. When I stepped inside, the scent of fresh paint hit me, the clean, crisp smell of possibility. Sunlight streamed through the living room windows, casting long, soft shadows across the hardwood floors. It wasn't huge. It wasn't flashy. But it was mine. Or it could be. "So?" Jenna asked gently. "Do you want to put in an offer?" My voice shook. Yeah, I do." We sat on the floor with the paperwork spread out between us. As I signed each form, my hands trembled, not from hesitation, but from disbelief that my life could actually change. When she handed me a spare copy of the documents, she smiled. "Congratulations. This is a big deal." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you. Really." Walking out of that house, feeling the sun hit my face, I knew something inside me had shifted permanently. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to tell my family a single thing. I wanted them to see the result, not the process. Almost as if the universe sensed I was finally standing on my own feet, my phone started ringing nonstop the following week. The first call came while I was leaving work, the warm evening air brushing against my face as I stepped into the parking lot. It was my mom. I let it ring twice before answering. "Where have you been?" she demanded, skipping any greeting. "We needed you this weekend." Your sister was overwhelmed. I took a slow breath. "I told you I couldn't." Her voice sharpened instantly. "You're being selfish." The second call came from my dad that same night. "We raised you better than this," he snapped. "Your sister is drowning in responsibility and you're off doing God knows what." "I'm taking care of my own life," I said quietly. "What life?" he shot back. "You should be here helping your family." The word family kept hitting me like a slap, each time harder than the last. They used it like a rope, something to tie me back into place. But the more they pulled, the more I felt myself resisting. By the weekend, my sister joined in. "You seriously can't come help assemble the baby swing?" she whined. "I'm busy," I repeated. "With what? Sitting alone in your little apartment?" Her words were laced with disgust, like my independence was offensive to her. "You don't understand," I said. "I shouldn't have to," she snapped. "You're supposed to help me. I'm pregnant." There it was, the entitlement, loud and unfiltered. But the real explosion came the next day when my mom called again, her voice trembling with anger. "You owe us after everything we've done for you," she said, as if my entire life was a debt they were collecting. "You left us when we needed you most." Hearing that, it did something to me. It didn't make me feel guilty, just strangely calm. Because they had no idea what was coming. And no idea what I was about to reveal. And for once, the silence was theirs, not mine. The final push came a few days later when my mom called and said, "We need to talk. Face to face." Her tone wasn't soft this time, it was sharp, clipped, the way she spoke when she expected obedience. I agreed to meet them, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because the timing finally felt right. For once, I held something they didn't know about, something they never thought I was capable of. The power shift was almost physical. I could feel it humming under my skin as I drove. They were already waiting on the curb when I pulled up. My dad's arms were crossed, my mom pacing, my sister sitting in the car fanning herself dramatically like she was too exhausted to exist. "Well," my dad demanded, "where are we going?" "You'll see," I said, keeping my voice steady. They followed behind me in tense silence as I drove through quiet streets lined with trees and fresh pavement. My heart pounded, not from fear, but anticipation. When I finally turned onto a small residential road and stopped in front of the house, my mom squinted. "Why are we here?" I stepped out of the car and held up the keys. "Because," I said, "this is mine." My sister blinked. What do you mean yours?" I walked up the driveway, placed my hand on the door, and pulled out the closing papers. "I bought a house," I said simply. "Last week." The shock on their faces was almost surreal. "How could you afford this?" my dad demanded. "You're lying," my sister muttered. My mom finally found her voice. Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at them, really looked. All the years of being overlooked, dismissed, minimized, they all settled into that moment, because, I said quietly, being kicked out showed me exactly where I stand. My sister's lips tightened. "So you just abandoned us?" "No," I replied. "I chose myself." The breeze rustled the small tree in the front yard, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. And the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I thought showing them the house would finally end things, some clean emotional boundary they couldn't argue with, but instead, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire I didn't know they were capable of. The call started slowly at first, a missed call from mom, a short voicemail from dad asking me to rethink things. But then the messages grew longer, sharper, more frantic. Every evening, as I stepped through the front door of my own home, the scent of fresh paint greeting me, my phone would light up with their names, over and over. I started letting every call go to voicemail. And every voicemail got worse. "Your sister is struggling," Dad snapped in one recording, his voice tight with frustration. "You need to step up." Another message from Mom: "We didn't raise you to be this cold. Your family needs you." Then my sister: "I can't believe you're doing this to me. To your niece. What kind of brother abandons his family during the hardest time of their lives?" I stood in my empty living room, their words echoing through the space, bouncing off the bare walls. "This isn't abandoning anyone," I whispered to myself. "This is finally choosing me." But the guilt they had spent years training into me, tried crawling back into my chest like a parasite. One night, Mom called again, and for reasons I still don't understand, I answered. Her voice was shaky. "We can't do everything alone. The baby cries non-stop. Your sister is exhausted. We're exhausted. We need you to come back." "Back?" I repeated. "Yes," she said quickly. "You can stay in your old room. Just for a few months. Until things settle." My old room, the same room they emptied before I even had a chance to pack, the same room they repainted without hesitation. "I'm not coming back," I said softly. Silence. Then a small, wounded whisper: "We didn't think you'd actually leave us." I closed my eyes, letting the weight of her words sink and fall away. Because finally, I wasn't the one breaking. They were. The morning after that last call, I woke up in my new bedroom to soft sunlight spilling across the floorboards. For a moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, the good kind of quiet. No footsteps pacing outside my door. No demands. No tension waiting for me in the hallway. Just peace. A peace I never realized I'd been starving for until I finally tasted it. I took a deep breath, letting the stillness settle inside me like something sacred. Later that day, I stood in the kitchen making coffee, the rich smell filling the air, grounding me in the life I built myself. As the machine hummed, my phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't anger. The message was from my mom: "We're sorry. Please come talk to us when you can." I stared at the screen, the words blurry for a moment, not from emotion, but from the strange contrast. After years of being the one who apologized, the one who bent, the one who carried the weight, they were finally feeling consequences. I called her back, but my voice stayed steady. "I appreciate the apology," I said. She exhaled shakily. "We took you for granted. We know that now." Dad's voice appeared in the background, quieter than usual. My sister didn't say anything, but I could hear the baby crying faintly. "Life's still happening without me," Mom asked. "Will you come back? Just visit. Please." I swallowed. "I'll visit. But I'm not moving back. Ever." There was a long pause, not angry this time, just acceptance, heavy and reluctant. "We understand," she finally whispered. After the call, I walked through my house, the floors warm under my feet, sunlight painting the walls gold. Every room felt like a quiet victory. Every corner felt like proof that I wasn't disposable. Not anymore. I stood in the doorway of the living room, looking out at the world through my own windows, and felt something I'd never felt before: unshakable self-worth. They could ask. They could regret. They could apologize. But I wasn't theirs to control anymore. I chose myself, fully, finally, permanently.